Guys, it's that time of year. So we've talked about the best movies of the year. We've talked about the best that cinema has to offer in the year of 2017. But now let's move on to what I just thought were the worst, the most insufferable films that I had to sit through this year. But before we get started, I'd like to throw out some dishonorable mentions. These are films that were really bad but just didn't quite make the cut to be the worst movies of the year. We have The Great Wall, Jigsaw, Wish Upon, Flatliners, and Bright. Now that those are out of the way, let's dive right into what are the absolute worst movies of the year. The film that when everyone saw the trailer, they went, "Who thought that was a good idea?" Well, guess what? The movie's awful. The film was supposed to come out 2 years ago, but it had been pushed away for so long, and somehow it managed to stumble its way into a theater. This film is the result of a producer who collaborated with his 4-year-old son to make this movie, and oh boy does it show. Monster Trucks has some of the goofiest and most unfunny moments in the entire year, and it just tries to play it off as a joke, but it just comes off as really corny and really cringeworthy. Once again, a film that was delayed and delayed, but this time it was as a result of reshoots, and it ended up being in a movie that was so completely unenjoyable that it looks bad even compared to other disaster films. And with a budget of over $125 million, this film on its opening weekend made just $12.5 million. Yikes! I can't even imagine what this movie was like before the reshoots. Oh my god. With such a mixed bag of ideas and messages, Geostorm probably would have been better off if the studio just cut their losses and put it into theaters as is. Please, will someone end this franchise? This film made the least amount of money out of any movie in the entire series, and it was just dreadful. Johnny Depp continues to wander from scene to scene as stuff just happens around him. And I beg of you, if you're gonna make another one of these movies that's just as bad as its predecessors, at least make it brief. But this movie didn't even have the common courtesy of doing that. This film is over 2.5 hours long. And my hope is that I just don't have to sit through another one of these films. They just get progressively worse as the series goes on, which is somehow possible. It's a rare thing to see a movie this cheesy. If you couldn't tell by its title alone, this is one of the most just corny, cheeseball movies that I saw this entire year. This movie had me laughing consistently throughout the entire thing, and not because it wanted me to. There are lines in this film such as, "What's your favorite thing about Earth? You are." Even Inspector Harry Hole and all of his best efforts couldn't save this movie from being an absolute train wreck. A movie that was so confident that it was the next Seven that it ends with a pretty much wink to the audience that there's gonna be another movie. And good luck with that, because this movie made $4 million on its opening weekend. This is one of the biggest surprises of the year. The director, the cast, the cinematographer, all are good components that come together just somehow making film that is just absolutely atrocious. Oh boy, the top 5. Now we really start to get our hands dirty. Ugh, The Bye-Bye Man. Even though this was the first movie that I saw of this entire year, I still have not been able to scrub this movie from my mind. Undoubtedly the worst horror film of the year. If I was a professor and I was teaching a college course on how to act, I would show the class this movie and say, hey, this is what not to do. Throughout the entire movie, I heard little snickers at some of the line delivery in this movie, which was just so laughably bad. Now, this is probably the worst movie that I saw this year, but this film is just so blissfully unaware of how awful it is. It just comes off as so funny, and you just really can't help but laugh at it. So I will give it the benefit of the doubt and put it in my number 5 spot. Most movies' concepts range from okay to great, but this film, when they announced that they were going to do this movie, I think everyone all at once went, no. What a completely moronic idea for a movie. Who thought that this was a good idea? This movie features some of the worst jokes, some of the worst messages that I've seen any kids film give throughout the entire year. This is also a really weirdly cynical movie that features these dated references already. This film is absolute garbage, and there's really only one emoji that can perfectly sum up my thoughts on this movie. Please, just in this franchise. It completely blows my mind that they continue to make these completely idiotic movies. And what's crazy is these movies get progressively worse as the series goes on. Now keep in mind, the first one isn't that great. I honestly pity anyone who is an actual Transformers fan and just sees these characters that they love just get repeatedly violated with each movie. This is a very long and bloated and aggressively stupid film that honestly doesn't even show Optimus Prime transform. You're called Transformers and you can't even do that right. With almost every film that came out this year, I can give you the basic outline of the plot. I can tell you pretty much what the movie is about. Now, what's Song to Song about? I don't know. I wish I had a time machine solely that I could go back in time and tell myself, get out of the theater. Don't go see this movie. But there was a little freaking voice in my head that was like, hey man, it's gonna get better. Just sit in the theater. It might end well. I'm convinced that that voice was Satan. This is a boring and very pretentious film that does nothing besides play EDM music and have attractive people look at each other for 2 hours. I'm not kidding. You would have to pay me to watch this movie again. We did it. It's that time, guys. The worst movie of 2017. This film broke me. I don't think in any movie I've seen a more unintentionally toxic relationship than in the 50 Shades franchise. In a series that pretty much relishes in the idea of how sexy it is, this film is so painfully unattractive. There is essentially zero romance in either of these two movies. The actors who are portraying these two characters hate each other off camera, and it shows. They just have zero chemistry between each other, and honestly, that's just the sex scenes. And when they aren't having sex, which is a large majority of this film, it's just the most boring, monotonous, melodramatic bullshit that I've seen all year. This film is so hollow and so unsexy that it makes me queasy. Every time that I go and see a movie and I see a trailer for 50 Shades Free, I get physically angry that means I have to sit through another one of these films and just watch another skid mark on the underwear of filmmaking. So that does it, guys. The worst films of 2017. 2018 is almost upon us, and that means we have more bad movies, but more importantly, that means we have more great films, which, speaking of which, if you have not seen my list of the best movies of the year, please pop over to go see that. It's a much more enjoyable time. So that does it for today, guys. What are your least favorite films of the year? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, click a link down below and subscribe to my channel for more reviews and related things. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.